Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today we have me, a knife reviewer, reviewing the knife of another knife reviewer. That knife reviewer's name is Neeves Knives, or more specifically, Jared Neeve of Neeves Knives. Wow, that took me 3 times to get through. But we did it. This is the Neeves Knives Misdemeanor. This was actually designed by Jared of Neeves Knives. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Neeves Knives. If you're not, what are you doing? Go subscribe to Neeves Knives. Seriously, this is really cool. And let me start this off. I know a ton of people are going to be like, "Aren't you and Jared like buddies?" So he sends you his knife and like you showcase it. I mean, yeah, he got plenty of traffic from it when I unboxed it. But I'm a knife reviewer, and I always come at these things with I try to be as unbiased as possible. So yeah, Jared and I are friends, and he did loan this to me for me to take a look at. But I'm going to be fair about it. But I'm also going to let you guys know that I actually really, really like it. So you can believe me or not believe me. That's perfectly fine. But that's the truth. I really like it. And it doesn't surprise me that it's good. Jared doesn't do, nothing content. I believe that Jared knows what he's talking about. And he's really good about understanding edge geometry. And he does a lot of testing and a lot of sharpening. So it shouldn't be any surprise that somebody like Jared can create a really good pocket knife. Now, I'm saving this review so that it's timed so that it releases right around the time when the knife releases. So I have no idea what the date is. I will try and link where you will be able to get this down in the description. I think it's actually his website. You can check there to see if it's available. If it's not, you can reach out to him. You can check him out on Instagram, right? There's probably information on his website. Thanks so much to Jared for loaning this to me for review. This is a prototype, couple of changes to this one. We'll go over that. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. And I don't know where the card is, but also on TikTok. Oh, there it is. It's right there. And on TikTok at the_metal_complex. So, first of all, what's going to change? We'll do the whole thing here. What's going to change? What's going to be the deal here? There are 2 DLC options and 2 plain options. I've seen a version of this out there that's got like a cool green pocket clip. I can only guess that is absolutely going to be available. But yeah, you'll have 2 different options there. The clip is going to be slightly extended from its original position. I don't know exactly what he means by slightly. Honestly, I like a shorter clip. But that's just me, right? There are benefits. There's pros and cons to a longer clip. Personally, I like a shorter clip. I very much doubt he's going to extend it to the point where it'll make much of a difference. I bet it'll be kind of trivial, but I honestly don't know there. This is just what he told me. Also, he's going to have his logo on the pivot. I think that's a smart move. I don't think this is bad. I think it's small enough, but I think putting your logo on the pivot is a classy move. It draws the eyes more towards the design and the blade, right, than it does the branding. And I think Jared understands that, and that can be an eyesore, right? I'm if he's like me, I always get upset when companies are like blammo knives all over the freaking blade. It's like, oh my god, Microtech. Sorry, weird cough there. Yeah, but we don't love to see that, so that makes sense to me. Let's see here. The K390, he also said, is going to be smaller. Yes, this is a K390 blade. Apparently that's Jared's favorite steel, and for good reason. We'll talk more about that. But this K390, how they label it, it's going to be smaller. Also a good move, I think. Price point right around $300. Let me add in there before people freak out, right? This is manufactured by Riyadh, and there's a lot of effort here. K390 is not a common blade steel. It's also not a cheap blade steel, and it is also, in my opinion, hardened really, really well. Like the heat treat on this is really, really good. On top of that, we do have premium materials like titanium. So $300 is a lot of money for a knife, right? But when we're comparing apples to apples, I'm going to go over why I think that's a fair price. So if you're familiar with Riyadh, you're going to be like, wow, Riyadh's only charging $300 for something that they manufactured, right? They're generally a bit higher. The K390 is 63 on the uncoated versions and 62 on the coated versions. And Jared noted that anybody who might be slightly disappointed in the hardness, he wanted to note the geometry of his blade, which is ridiculous. I don't even have a word for it. This is one of the thinnest edges I've ever seen. Like my Opinel is sweating over here. That's how thin it is, right? Shut up. Don't you? You're not a part of this, huh? You're not a part of this. You think you're a part of this? You're not a part of this. This is one of the thinnest blades that I've ever experienced, right? The geometry, as you know, geometry plays a major, if not the most important role when it comes to cutting performance. So I am not a master wizard level 9000 when it comes to metallurgy and cutting and anything like that. I'm a design reviewer. Okay, but from what I know, he is correct that the geometry should actually make up for that slightly. Now, would that perform slightly better if it was higher hardness? Perhaps, but he also noted that he would have loved to have that up there at 65, but understandably, that would have made the knife quite a bit more expensive. So, I think that's all right, personally, but you can think whatever you want. Let's see here. Oh, he's also going to reduce the thing. He's going to actually make it thinner. This is crazy thin, is that it's 95 thousandths by the edge currently. He's going to reduce the thinness by the edge to 90 thousandths, which is, that's insane. So anyways, enough with the intro. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. So the Neeves Knives Misdemeanor measures at about 8 inches. That's where I consider, like, that's full-size knife territory. To me, that's right around where I prefer, in terms of like my carry size. That's right around what I prefer. Blade length, my measurement, 3.65 inches of blade. Your cutting edge is 3 1/4 because of this, sort of half frame, half blade choil area there. Let's do some size comparisons. Any custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under original goat and others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. So this is definitely bigger than the 8020.5, but it is a fairly narrow profile, and it is not by anyone's definition going to be considered thick. Not at all. It actually ends up being a full-size knife that is pretty compact versus, I'll talk about it up against the Ritter Hogue here for a second, but the Ritter Hogue would be considered like a pretty typical full-size knife. This is substantially more compact than something like the Ritter Hogue. Up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Once again, very similar to the PM2. It actually shares some ergonomic similarities with the PM2. Now, this is when, let's say pheasant people might scream copy. No, that's adorable. No, it's just very similar to ergonomic lines when we're looking at a knife that is iconic for its utility and also for its look. But these are also just ergonomic lines that work really, really well, right? So if we're going to say that, well, I've got about 1,000 other knives that I can show you and talk about that have similar ergonomic lines because they work really well as knives and because the limitations of like what feels good in the human hand in the context of a knife is more limited than I think people would care to realize. So, no, it's not a copy. I'm sorry. You guys think I'm joking. You think I'm joking about these people who say this stuff. Like, what kind of, bag of hammers is going to say something like there people say stuff like that. It's absolutely bonkers. Anyways. Up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. It actually it's not nearly as lightweight as the Deca, but when I talk about like the compact blade height and handle height, it does remind me of it in that way, but it is clearly not the same as the Deca. This is what I mean about it being a substantially more compact knife than something like the Ritter Hogue. A lot of people are going to call the Ritter Hogue a pretty standard full-size knife. It just ends up being a smaller object in the pocket, which was my experience. Let's move on into carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Not a thick knife. It's actually a little thinner than the Spyderco Para 3. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is where the knife shines in terms of, the comfort of carry. My experience with this in the pocket was pretty great, honestly. You never feel like you're carrying something huge, but you're carrying something that's plenty capable because you get quite a bit of blade with it. It is so compact. It honestly is fairly similar. I mean, it's longer than the Para 3, but it's not quite as tall. And the whole object itself just fits really nicely in the pocket. So it's not a situation where most people are going to feel like they're carrying around a knife that's too big for their pants. If you are wearing, very, very tight, like if you're wearing leggings, probably not, but regular pants, even athletic shorts, I don't know that I'd be too bothered with this. There's a lot of full titanium knives that are 8 inches that I definitely would not carry in athletic shorts or sweatpants. But this one, I don't think I'd have a problem with it. So going to be a pretty comfortable carry no matter, what you're wearing. Let's go ahead and do the weight. So what are we looking at for materials? We're looking at titanium. Really nice. The texture on this is something I don't normally see. It's like a hammered texturing, but it's really nice to the touch, not aggressive, and also does legitimately create meaningful traction. So that's pretty cool. Your actual weight on this guy is coming in at 4 ounces, which is honestly that makes perfect sense to me. I bet you anything because the blade is so thin, right? Now I can understand why a lot of people would say, well, if the balance is that far back, which it is, right? So you're going to notice it's butt heavy, but the thing itself is not heavy enough to where that is going to matter as much. When you have more balance, the knife definitely feels lighter for what it is, but it's only a 4-ounce knife to begin with. And let's remember, people would say, well, if he thinned out the scales, he could bring the balance to the center. Okay, he could, but the drawback is you get the scales too thin, and then the knife just becomes uncomfortable. And so personally, I'm glad that Jared did not do that. I would much rather have the thing be comfortable and off balance than be balanced and uncomfortable, right? Did I say that right? I want the comfort, right? The balance is fine if we can get it, but he wanted a thin knife and he wanted it to be comfortable, right? So with this profile, that's kind of where you end up. You don't want the razor thin handle scales. That's yucky. I don't like to feel that on my hand. So I think that was a smart choice. Hardware check. Let's get on my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel or the pinned comment. That's a T8 we've got in here. You'll notice we have a T8 pivot and we have no visible hardware on this side. That's cool. I like that. There's 2 reasons that's cool. Number 1, I think it looks better. He's actually got, that's bigger than T8. Is that like a T10? That's so weird. I mean, that's cool, but it's like T10. It's bigger hardware on the frame than the body. It doesn't matter because my thing is as long as it's T8 or bigger, right? So that's fine. You got T10 body screws. That's absolutely fantastic. And instead of there being 2 on each side, these go all the way through and thread slightly into the other side of the titanium frame, but not all the way through, so you can't see them. And that's cool. Some people care, some people don't. But I think this is a really, really clean look. You have the blade, slight billboarding on the pivot, not here, and then 1 screw and nothing here. I love that. I think that is absolutely fantastic. And it also makes the knife stupidly easy to disassemble. He'll have a hidden screw underneath here for the pocket clip. That could honestly be T6, T8, or maybe it's T10. It doesn't really matter to me. There's only 1 position for the pocket clip, which is a bummer. I gotta be honest, I didn't ask Jared about lefty position. So it is possible that there is going to be a lefty mounting position and he just didn't mention it. It's also possible he mentioned it and I forgot. It's also possible that he'll be making left-handed versions of this. I don't know, and I'm sorry about that. I'm already into the review. I don't think that that's the case. I think it's just right-handed, right? But maybe I'm wrong, so. Anyways, this will be beautifully simple to take apart and put back together. Runs on bearings, right? 2 pieces of titanium. We got the blade, we got the pivot, and we got 2 body screws, and that's it. Yeah, that's great. Hats off to Jared for that. Disassembly is a big deal. You do it as much as we do it, and it becomes... It's just, I get so mad when I'm like, why did you put 18 screws on this? Like Ontario. Jeez! 8. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 10. Like, I mean, I know it's an old knife, but it's like, geez, you don't need that many. Anyways, let's go ahead and measure that blade stock thickness, which I don't think he said. I think it was only behind the edge. He said it was going to change. Blade stock thickness, 94 thousandths there. Very, very thin. Very, very Jared. That's it, right? Okay, let's move on into the meat and potatoes. Here's another area where Jared and I obviously think alike, and that's ergonomics. I want an open profile. I want subtle transitions from forward choil to primary index finger position, or whatever you want to call that. I do not want a hook at the back. I don't like that. I mean, yeah, I lock in just fine here, but what if your hands are bigger than mine, right? To the ladies and gentlemen out there who have 2XL, 3XL hands, have you ever gripped this thing in the standard grip? I bet it pisses you off that your finger does this. Like, that drives me nuts. And I understand that's beneficial, right? If you're really trying to lock in while you're, whatever it is that you're doing. But I'm just a regular Joe. I just want to be comfortable. I want to lock in, but I want to be comfortable, right? This is great. Not just here, standard grip, choke up, right? But also, Jared knows that people are going to use this design to do draw cuts, which I have to imagine is why this little scallop or this little scoop right here is here. It's for your index finger, right? I mean, you can also come up here, right, holding the knife like this or like this. Honestly, there's really not. I mean, I'm not gonna do this, but you know, however you want to hold it, it's great. He also extended the jimping way out here. We didn't talk about action, did we? I think we'll go ahead and talk about the action on this knife since we're talking about all the different areas that are done correctly. Disengagement of the lock bar is very easy thanks to a little cutout here. He had a little surprise for us, a little bit of texturing there, a different type of texturing. It's like a crosshatch or diamond pattern. Most importantly, though, it's very comfortable. And if you are like me and you like to disengage your knife with one hand, Jared has made sure that there is no double clutch, meaning by the time the blade reaches your finger after a single-handed disengagement of the lock bar, that detent ball is well up on the face of the blade. Those of us who like to close our knives like this, that's a big preference there. And that forward choil is large enough that not even the corner comes down on your finger. It's honestly just choil coming down on my finger. So the whole process is very natural, very safe, very convenient. It's very pleasant, right? This is not only a convenient knife to deploy and use, but it's also just it's safe, right? Now, if you like to disengage your knife and close it with one hand, it's also fine, right? That lock bar tension is not insane. It's very easy to do. I think it's tuned properly for very specifically the front flipper, and yes, it really does make that metallic sound if you pick that up. I think Ray from Everyday City Carry also talked about that. It does have a little bit of a metallic ting, like throwing a large coin into a pile of pennies really hard. It's weird, but that's the best way I can describe it. It actually does. It's actually pretty satisfying. I like that. It works really well as a front flipper. I'm not a big fan of front flippers, but I can't say that this is really in the way for me. I mean, I'm not going to use it, so it's just there. I would use this, which is also placed perfectly. A lot of people say, yeah, but it's partially under the frame. But I'm not going to deploy it right here, right? When I grip this knife, my index finger is already in the position that I feel like is meant to deploy it, which is at the base. There's plenty of room here and you don't have to dig at it. A thumb flick is possible. I think some people will probably be better at it than me. This isn't my favorite way to deploy this knife. If I was going to carry and use this knife every day, I would open it one of two ways. Number one, I would pinch open it and roll it out with my thumb. And number two, I would reverse flick it almost every single time. It works perfectly in both of those ways. I have no issue with that. I think the D10 is also tuned exactly right for that. And combined with the very, very convenient and comfortable disengagement, I think that's superb. So I don't have an issue there. It doesn't make me want a flipper or thumb studs. I generally prefer thumb studs, but I think that the deployment methods or the deployment mechanisms on this knife are designed properly, and that's all you're really going to need. So there you go. But if you do prefer thumb studs or a flipper and you hate these types of, then this definitely is going to be for you. These are the only options, right? The texturing, really like that. We kind of covered that. Really, really nice to the touch. It's not super aggressive. It's definitely not going to fray up your pants. He did not mention a bald spot underneath the clip. I don't really think you need it. Not on something like this. The surface is smooth enough, right? You'll also notice his relief cut is on the inside. A lot of people asked me why I wasn't doing that, because the one that I designed is on the inside. His is on the outside. It does have an interesting aesthetic look. So people go back and forth on this, and I've realized that I am in the minority. For some reason, I enjoy aesthetically the relief cut being on the outside. And I feel like it's like 90 to 10. It's like 10% of people agree with me, maybe less, and like 90% of people would agree with Jared. So I talked with Sergio about that. I said, I just don't really like how it looks, but people are really wanting this. Like, is there a reason we can't do this? And I can't remember what he said exactly. Something to do with like wanting the tension to be in a certain spot. And I don't want to use that to say that the way that this is done is bad, because it's clearly capable of holding its position under normal circumstances. I don't think any more than 3 light taps is what's required to prove that the knife will hold up, right? And also, Riot knows how to do a frame lock. So as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. And if you like the aesthetic of the lock bar being, or the lock bar cutout or the relief cut being on the inside, then you'll like this, right? There is a certain charm to it. I think maybe I'm just conditioned to seeing it on the outside, so it's weird to me to see the cut just end. You know what I'm realizing right now? There is actually a bald spot under there. It does. It goes all the way back. Wow. Sorry about that. I literally did not notice that until just now. There's actually a bald spot underneath the pocket clip. So, okay. Let's see here. Yeah, the edge is stupidly thin. I actually did demonstrate this when I unboxed it. We'll use, what was I writing here? A list of, these look like overbuilt knives. I have no idea. I don't need it anymore. But I can tell you, God, this is so ridiculous. It is so stupidly thin. I understand that this is not like the proper test for this, but I love seeing how little effort it takes to bite. So, getting into paper like this and just taking a look up close at what it's doing is just insane, man. It is so thin. I bet. Hold on. Something a little. Let's have a little fun here, okay? I bet I could just set this up like this, and I bet I could just chop cut it. Let's see. Can I get this? Oh, pretty much, though. It pretty much just went straight down. That's wild. I want to try again. I'm going to try again. Ready? It went into the exact same part. Hold on. We got to get it on a different part of the paper here. Yeah. This, man, that time it didn't even knock it over, right? So these, I would say that that's more of a parlor trick than anything else, but you do need a really, really thin edge in order to be able to do that. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, this is not a hard use knife. This is not a knife that you go out and you're like, I tried to screw in, it says working on the electrical sockets, and I used Neeves knives there to try to screw in the little Phillips heads, and the tip broke off, so it's click. Yeah, well, that means that you're dumb and you shouldn't. Don't do that. Use a screwdriver, right? So don't do that. And it sounds silly, right? It sounds like, it's a Metal Complex arguing with imaginary people. These are not imaginary people. There's a ton of people out there who just believe that a knife is the same thing as a screwdriver or a pry bar, and so what if the edge goes dull, right? I use it for everything. In my opinion, that's stupid. If the edge goes dull, you don't have a knife anymore. You have a piece of metal with a pivot attached to a handle that can do nothing as well as other tools specifically designed for specific tasks. So, this was designed to slice and to puncture things that are softer than the material on the blade, right? K390, interesting stuff. Definitely going to be one of, not the king, but it is definitely up there in king territory for edge retention, right? Much higher potential edge retention than a lot of the powerhouses, right? It's not gonna be, I think, like 15V and Rex 121 Maxim, and I think those are all a little higher, but there's not many, right? And you sacrifice a little bit of toughness with a lot of those, right? Like, I mean, like K390 is not a tough steel, but when you're up there comparing against some of the giants, again, I'm not a metallurgist, a lot of those are kind of teeter-tottering there with the toughness element, which if you're going to get really, really thin, you got to be really careful about that, right? So if you cut into a staple with this, it's probably not going to be fun to get that back out, right? But as long as you're not doing that, you should be good to go. Really great ergonomics. We talked about that. The pocket clip is designed to not create an issue with your hand, and even if he does extend it, it's fine. I mean, it's milled titanium, it's flat, it's like rounded out, there's no pointy part. This has a nice ramp, so up and over the pocket seam, it was very easy for me. Very typical standard backspacer that's raised slightly above the scales here with a gear pattern, so you can make use of that jimping there. That's fine. I imagine those will come in different colors depending on the version that you get. Steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. We have external stops attached to the blade, riding on channels at either side of the titanium. That's nice. No blade play, up, down, left to right, no lock stick, no pivot lash. Very smooth and consistent in here, and a nice clicky detent. This is a great knife, you know, and again, it's like I said at the beginning of the video, you can think, oh, he's gonna say nice things about it because they're like YouTuber buddies, right? Jared and I have had 10 to 12 conversations in DMs and one live conversation, right? He has a channel that is similar to mine in some ways and very different in other ways. But that's pretty much it. You know, I think that like we have an understanding, you know, with this stuff that at the end of the day, we're still trying to be honest, right? So I think there are some people out there who probably believe that the only way that they would believe that I give another YouTuber's knife design a positive review, or the only way that they would believe that I gave an honest review is if I gave it a negative review, right? And then there's people who believe, well, if you give it a negative review, then you're obviously competing with them, right? And the truth is I think it's just a lot less complicated. It's just easier to be honest. And a lot of people who do the same kind of stuff have really, really good insight on this. And so it's not really a surprise when somebody like Cole from Tri-State EDC or somebody like Jared from Neeves Knives comes up with a really, really good design. It's because you handle so much stuff that you like or don't like that you get a really, really good idea of what a good design looks like, especially if you're going out and using this stuff, right? It wouldn't surprise me if Jared spent months or even over a year coming up with this. It's not easy to do, right? Some people, I mean, technically anybody can do it, but can anybody make a really, really great design that's going to translate really well with a lot of people? No, I honestly don't believe that. But I think this is good, right? So yeah, this is obviously a super performer. It's obviously meant as a tool for people who understand how to use knives. And the downside to this knife, truthfully, the only downside is the fact that it's K390, and that even though it's not like maximum hardness for K390, it's still really hard, right? You're not gonna be able to just casually, you know, reprofile this thing if you have to. But that's, you know, like whether or not that's like a blessing or a curse, it depends on your perspective, right? If you're used to sharpening, you even have like, you know, kind of even like a little bit of knowledge when it comes to sharpening, you have some sharpening equipment, I think you're going to be good to go. But the average person is probably going to find a little bit of frustration there, right? And there are pros and cons to using any composition for sure. So that's really that's honestly the only thing that I can come up with, but that's only going to affect some people, right? I think Jared did a great job. I think his price point of $300 is kind of impressive for Riot. I'm not sure how you got it that low. I would have, if he'd have said Riot's making my knife, here are the materials, I'd have been like, so that's going to be $350, right? Now, $300, if that's where he gets it, he told me right around $300. I don't think there's a problem with that. I think that's pretty good. I think he made a great design, and it's honestly extremely recommendable. This is going to legitimately go in my most recommended knives playlist. I think he did an awesome job. So make sure you check it out and subscribe to Neeves. if you haven't. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on the Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.